Good evening for everyone, and thank you very much that all of you came to hear my speech tonight. This evening I will talk about the situation of the freedom of press in Hungary, and also I will talk my second most favorite topic after my kids and family, Telex, and I'd like to talk about the future of independent media and how I see it from Hungary. Freedom can mean a lot of things to different people. For me, it means that I stick to the values that are most important to me. And in my profession, which is journalism, those values are quite crystal clear. You need to be transparent, you need to be fair, you need to be curious, you need to be transparent, and of course, as much possible, you need to be objective. So when I have to make hard decisions in my professional life and my professional freedom, I always look for these crystal clear boundaries. And sometimes it involves tears. On this photo, which toured the Hungarian media and appeared in some major international newspapers, I cry bitterly, while my colleagues who support me also cry regardless of their gender. In the photo, I am mourning the nearly 20 years I spent in the job, initially as an intern, then as a reporter, then as a deputy editor-in-chief at Index, the then largest Hungarian news site that I loved passionately. And I mourn the situation that I had to put my resignation on the table a couple of minutes ago. And more than 80 of us did the same: editors, reporters, video journalists, photographers, financial officers. Everybody left, everybody quit Index. We quit the day after our editor-in-chief, Szabolcs Dul, was fired. We quit because we knew that our independent journalistic operation was no longer possible. But sometimes, and that is the good news, tears can turn into wide smiling in a very short period of time. This other photo was taken only 9 weeks after the previous one. This picture also made its rounds in the Hungarian media and appeared in quite a few international outlets as well, even on Wikipedia. In these pictures, I am extremely exhausted, but at the same time extremely happy, as I'm pressing a red button symbolizing the launching of Telex, which is now, a year later, the largest crowdfunding-based news portal in Hungary, and has received a dozen different journalistic awards, and has around 600,000 to 700,000 readers per day, and more than 47,000 donors. But let's go back a little bit in time, and let me explain what Index meant for the Hungarian public sphere. It was the largest 20-year-old, market-leading, most read news site in the country. When we worked there, Index had around 1 to 1.5 million readers per day and covered every story that mattered. We produced news, videos, podcasts, investigative pieces, and if someone, regardless of his or her political views, wanted to know what's happening in the country or outside the country in the world, they just clicked on Index and got unbiased news. So it is understandable that our mass resignation had a large impact. On this video, you can see while we are walking on the corridors of Index to hand in our resignations. We quit because we no longer saw any safeguards ensuring that we would get to work freely and independently. We resigned because independent journalism was no longer guaranteed due to the increasing influence of government-linked businessmen in Index's leadership and ownership. Years before the editor-in-chief was fired, Index's editorial staff drew the line and set two simple conditions regarding what independent operation means for us. Namely, that nobody from the outside the newsroom can tell us what to write and how, or with whom we should or shouldn't be working. Up to the start of the conflict, these conditions were met. But then, based on an outside initiative from external advisors, Index's boards of directors had taken a step towards the complete overhaul of the structure of the news site's editorial staff. And then editor-in-chief Szabolcs Dúl had resisted the plan and published an article explaining that he feels, and the whole newsroom feel, that Index's independence is in danger. After that, he was fired, and all of us decided to quit. Never before had the dismissal and the mass resignation attracted so much public attention in Hungary. After the mass departure, several thousands of people demonstrated on the streets of Budapest for press freedom and mourned the loss of the medium that until then had credibly, quickly, and accurately met their information needs around the clock. They were marching with billboards like "Free Country, Free Press" and 70 brave people. It was moving. So, and I really have not foreseen this, but it became obvious that we needed to fill the void, that these people who were marching on the street, that they are missing, that we were keen to give them something to read. And in a blink of an eye, we became the news ourselves. Journalists became the news ourselves. The fact that Hungary's most popular media outlet was going under for political reasons was seized upon by the word press, from the Washington Post to the Japanese public television through BBC and the Volkskrant. As an independent journalist who has worked in Hungary for decades, who has a media studies PhD, and who experienced the politically influenced takeover, I can assure you that freedom of press is in a very bad shape in my country. Considering the World Press Freedom Index, developed by Reporters Without Borders, evaluating media freedom across the globe on an annual basis, Hungary, after 15 years of continuous decline, now ranks 92nd. In 2006, it was 10th place on the list of 168 countries. The only EU country ranking lower is Bulgaria, while countries such as Albania, Moldova, and North Macedonia are ahead of Hungary. For those who are not very closely familiar with the Hungarian media sphere, I'd like to give a brief summary of the current situation. There are 5 important factors that shaped the Hungarian media in the last decade. The first is basically this pro-Orbán, pro-governmental media conglomerate which took over the majority of the media landscape. The primary reason behind this downward trend that you saw in the freedom of press data in the situation of freedom of press is the transformation of the Hungarian media market and its structure over the past decade, during which more and more independent media outlets fell into hands of business circles with close ties to the political elite. It's worth stressing that these businesses did not act independently, but as executors of an overreaching Fidesz strategy. Their transactions were, at the end of the day, financed by taxpayer money. Over the last 10 years, ever more printed media, radio and TV stations were acquired by people with connections to politics and politicians. The Hungarian media landscape basically fractured in these two distinct parts, outlets linked to the governing party and ones independent of it. The second important factor is that the Hungarian public broadcasting is basically a megaphone of the government. The public broadcasting companies funded this year by Hungarian taxpayers to the tune of about 339 million euros are basically a mouthpiece for the government. And there is this very special thing in Hungary, which do not have in any other countries, that several hundred private media outlets are concentrated in the centrally managed Central European Press and Media Foundation called KESMA. It's an institution with a pronounced government bias. KESMA, which is classified as a matter of national strategic interest by the government, was established 3 years ago, and its portfolio includes TV channels, tabloids, radio stations, online news sites, and basically all county dailies, around 500 media outlets. There has been no such media holding in Hungary since the communist era. And the level of media concentration and this model at all, that the foundation will have around 500 media products which are operated centrally, is unprecedented in Europe. The scale of media concentration is unthinkable, I think, in the Western world. And this KESMA is a non-profit organization established by Orbán loyalists and runs this immerse media portfolio received from several pro-government businessmen as charitable donations. So it is important to highlight that while all the assets of these 500 outlets were donated to the foundation by their shareholders, the corresponding transactions amount to about 90 million euros, according to estimates. And here you can see an example of the centralization, how county dailies was published when the Prime Minister gave his Christmas interview 2 years ago. So the fourth factor is what Emily was talking a little bit about, the advertisement market. The Hungarian advertisement market is also an area heavily influenced by politics. One of the biggest players placing advertisements in the media is the Hungarian state itself. And it is important because traditionally and normally media outlets are financed by advertisement. But if those who are deemed sympathetic to the administration are allocated advertisement, while those classified as hostile are excluded, so it's a result that they can barely keep their heads above the voter financially, or they need to be creative and find another possibilities to finance themselves. And the fifth factor is access to information. Journalists do not go to prison in Hungary, and there have been no murders of journalists in the recent memory. Yet the work of independent journalists has rarely been more difficult. Not only do we have to struggle to maintain an economic basis of our work, but we also have to fight for access to information. Running up against brick walls when making inquiries in the public interest or requesting interviews is a constant. Not getting answers is par for the course. I tell you one example. Of the 100 days of Telex's existence, we recorded and documented on what subjects we asked a question to any Hungarian ministries, and whether there was an answer or not. If if there was an answer, we published the answer in the article. If we didn't, we could only indicate in the name of transparency that there was a question and there is no answer. And during these first 100 days of Telex, we sent out 52 different inquiries to different Hungarian ministries, and we received responses in only 9 cases. So not only is the Hungarian press currently experiencing painful cutbacks, but the ability of people in Hungary to access information is also being increasingly impaired. The shrinking media space is limiting the freedom of all of us and weakening democracy. That is why we, together with my colleagues, decided last summer that we would dare to think big, and we launched a large, independent, free news portal. That is how Telex was born. Telex is serving general interest and respecting such principles as relevance, fairness, credibility, entertainment, speed, and then not least accuracy. Telex was launched on the 2nd of October last year, operates 24/7 with a 70-strong newsroom, publishing around 80 articles and videos on weekdays and approximately 60 on Saturdays and Sundays. And we have around, as I mentioned, 600 to 700 readers a day. And as a media platform, Telex not only covers public affairs, but offers a diverse range of content from news and videos about the economy, culture, sports, the latest technological developments, scientific breakthroughs, to exciting, entertaining, unbiased, noteworthy stories about events in Hungary and around the globe. Our business model based on crowdfunding, and we are transparent on how we spend the money, publishing transparency reports every 6 months. And we pride ourselves on producing journalism that is both neutral and independent. So founded in the media environment currently prevalent in Hungary, and what's more, during a pandemic, Telex's success is unprecedented and unique feat. No one has established such a large editorial office before by means of crowdfunding alone. In the space of 1 month, we collected 1 million euros from our readers. Today, in Hungary, a country of 10 million people, so far 74,000 people have contributed with smaller or larger, occasional or regular sums to keep Telex running. And why do they support us? According to our readers' survey, 93% of our donors agreed with the statement that I financially support Telex because I consider the strengths of the Telex team and the cause of independent press important. They donate Telex because they would like to consume fact-based quality journalism, and because our team said no in a country where usually people don't say no to power. Telex's unique story is receiving a great deal of international attention. Countless newspapers, television, and radio stations have reached out to us over the past year to inquire about our story or even Hungary's media situation. And our story and work has been worldwide reported by the largest news media and has even been recognized with prestigious awards in 2020 and 2021. So regarding the future of news media looks to many and for a variety of reasons to be largely funded by money from readers. In Hungary, for sure. If more and more people realize that the existence of independent media depends on them, it will last longer. I think our mass resignation was the point where they decided that they need to contribute financially, not just at the newsstands on the street, but online as well. I strongly believe in readers' revenue, and that this is the future. But I also see there are no static situations in Hungary and its public sphere. The government has recently proposed mandatory listing of the names of wealthy donors who support NGOs. This proposal, luckily, was never implemented in the end, but it is clear that if something like this happens in Hungary, it can generally and greatly reduce the willingness to donate. And also, as an international investigation has found this summer that Pegasus, the spyware manufactured by Israeli cybersecurity firm NSO Group, has been in use in Hungary for years against targets such as investigative journalists and media owners, as well as against people around their personal circles. This fact can also harm access to information and willingness of sources to talk freely to journalists. By the way, the whole Pegasus story was broke on Telex by Direct 36 investigative journalism team. It is increasingly hard to be true to the original values of quality news journalism, but we will do just that, all of us here. You can see us on the picture. In the face of propaganda and adversity, we must remind ourselves every day that our enemy is not the government, and our job is not to change people's minds. Our job is to select and produce the most relevant news each day, to work on stories, and if we must, hopefully not a boring manner. What we do so, Hungarian people can make up their own minds about the important stuff. And it is an honor that so many of them made up their minds regarding Telex and find us worthy of their support. I think Telex's strength relies on the whole team, on our transparency, our impartiality, and our fairness. And it might be a cliche to end my speech with the sentence that 1 year ago, me and my colleagues wouldn't have thought, but the truth is, we wouldn't have thought. But there was one important thing that we were sure of. The only mistake we could have made was if we didn't even try. Thank you very much for the attention.